March 17, 1944. 8:47 hours. 23,000 feet above the German border. Captain Robert Morgan felt the B-17 Flying Fortress shudder as flak burst 200 feet below his left wing. The formation of 90 heavy bombers stretched behind him in a precise pattern. 3 combat box formations stacked at 1,000-foot intervals, each box containing 30 aircraft. Morgan's bomber, leading the entire strike package, was designated lead navigator for Mission 247, the destruction of the Schweinfurt ball-bearing factories deep inside Germany. The mission briefing at 4:30 hours had covered every detail. Primary target, Kugelfischer ball-bearing plant. Secondary target, Vereinigte Kugellagerfabriken facility 1.2 kilometers south. Total distance from base at Thorpe Abbotts, England to target, 623 miles. Expected opposition, heavy. Estimated German fighter strength, 150 to 200 Luftwaffe interceptors. Flak concentrations, severe over the Ruhr Valley, moderate over the approach corridor, intense at target. Morgan had studied the navigation charts for 90 minutes. The route was complex, a dogleg path designed to avoid the heaviest German defenses while maintaining fuel efficiency. Initial heading 087 degrees from base. First waypoint, the Dutch coast at Vlissingen. Second waypoint, Venlo on the German border. Third waypoint, the Rhine River crossing at Koblenz. Fourth waypoint, the main river at Wersbeck. Final approach, northwest vector to Schweinfurt. Morgan's navigation table held 6 charts covering the route. Each chart was marked with colored pencils, red for flak zones, blue for fighter assembly points, green for navigation checkpoints. His navigator, Lieutenant James Verines, sat at the bombardier station with backup charts and a Norden bomb sight calibrated for the target altitude and wind conditions. At 8:47 hours, the formation crossed the German border. The temperature outside was -42 degrees Celsius. Ice formed on the windscreen faster than the defroster could clear it. Morgan could see the contrails of the bombers behind him, white vapor trails stretching back toward England, marking their position for every German radar station and fighter controller within 200 miles. The intercom crackled. Verines reported from the nose compartment. Lead navigator to pilot. First checkpoint confirmed. Venlo identified. On course, on time. Morgan acknowledged. The formation was executing perfectly. Each bomber maintained precise position, 150 feet vertical separation, 200 feet lateral spacing. The tight formation provided overlapping fields of fire for the defensive gunners. A German fighter attacking from any angle would face concentrated fire from 30 to 40.50 caliber machine guns. At 8:53 hours, German flak batteries opened fire. The first bursts were ranging shots, black explosions at 22,000 feet, 1,000 feet below the formation. Morgan watched the gunners adjust. Second salvo at 22,500 feet. Third salvo at 23,000 feet. The fourth salvo bracketed the formation. The B-17 rocked as a flak burst detonated 50 feet to the right. Morgan heard metal fragments strike the fuselage. The aircraft shuddered but maintained altitude and heading. Behind him, the formation tightened. Pilots instinctively closed gaps, presenting a more compact target but also increasing the risk of mid-air collision if a damaged bomber fell out of formation. At 8:56 hours, Morgan's radio failed. The failure was catastrophic and immediate. One moment, the intercom was carrying routine position reports from the crew. The next moment, silence. Morgan toggled the radio switch. Nothing. He checked circuit breakers. All normal. He tried the backup radio. Dead. The radio failure eliminated communication with the formation, with fighter escorts, with ground control, with the other navigators. Morgan could not receive updates on German fighter positions. He could not coordinate with the P-47 Thunderbolt escorts scheduled to meet the formation at the Rhine River. He could not relay target information or abort orders if weather closed in over Schweinfurt. But the mission continued. 90 bombers, 900 crewmen, depended on Morgan's navigation. There was no abort procedure for lead navigator losing radio contact. The formation would follow him until he either reached the target or turned back toward England. Morgan leaned forward to check the navigation charts on his table. At that moment, the B-17 hit severe turbulence. The aircraft dropped 300 feet in 2 seconds, then rose 400 feet in a violent updraft. Morgan was thrown against his seat restraints. Behind him, he heard equipment shifting. In the nose compartment, Verini shouted something Morgan could not hear without the intercom. When the turbulence subsided, Morgan looked down at his navigation table. Empty. Every chart was gone. The sudden decompression from the turbulence had created a vacuum that sucked the charts through gaps in the aircraft structure. 6 charts, covering 623 miles of enemy territory, were now scattered across German farmland 23,000 feet below. Morgan had no radio, no charts, no communication with his navigator in the nose compartment, and 90 bombers following his lead, expecting him to guide them to a target 400 miles inside Germany. The mission briefing had lasted 90 minutes. Morgan had spent that time studying the charts, memorizing waypoints, calculating headings and distances. He had flown bombing missions over Germany for 11 months. He knew the geography. He knew the landmarks. He had seen the Rhine River from 20,000 feet a dozen times. He had identified Weisberg from 25,000 feet using the distinctive bend in the main river. But memory was not a navigation chart. Memory did not account for wind drift. Memory did not provide precise headings or distance calculations. Memory was fallible, especially under stress, under fire, with 900 men depending on its accuracy. Morgan made his decision. Continue to target using visual landmarks and dead reckoning. No abort. No turning back. The formation would follow him, and he would navigate from memory. At 9:12 hours, the formation reached the Rhine River. Morgan identified the river from 10 miles out, a distinctive silvery line cutting through the German landscape. He adjusted heading to 112 degrees, the memorized course from the Rhine to Weisberg. The adjustment was based entirely on his recollection of the briefing charts. No instruments, no confirmation, just memory and the visual landmark of the river below. The formation followed. 90 bombers turned in unison, maintaining formation discipline. The pilots trusted Morgan. They had no choice. Without radio contact, they could not question his navigation. They could only follow. German fighters appeared at 9:18 hours. Focke-Wulf 190s, diving from 28,000 feet, attacking the rear elements of the formation. Morgan saw traces arcing past his wings. He counted 8 fighters in the first wave, then 12 more. The P-47 escorts that should have met the formation at the Rhine were absent, probably because Morgan could not coordinate the rendezvous timing without radio communication. The formation absorbed the attack. Defensive fire from 360.50 caliber machine guns created a curtain of traces. 2 German fighters broke off smoking. A third exploded in midair, but the formation lost 3 bombers. Morgan watched them fall, one trailing fire, one spinning out of control, one simply dropping away with both inboard engines destroyed. 87 bombers remained. The formation closed gaps and continued east. At 9:34 hours, Morgan identified the main river. The distinctive bend near Weisberg was exactly where he remembered it. A 90-degree turn in the river, visible from 40 miles out. He adjusted heading to 094 degrees, the final approach vector to Schweinfurt. The adjustment was precise, based on the mental image of the briefing chart he had studied for 90 minutes. The formation followed. 87 bombers, still in perfect combat box formation, tracking Morgan's heading changes without question. German flak intensified at 9:47 hours. The Schweinfurt defenses were the heaviest in Germany, 88mm guns arranged in concentric rings around the ball-bearing factories. The first flak burst appeared at 22,000 feet. Morgan climbed to 24,000 feet. The flak followed. He climbed to 25,000 feet. The flak bracketed the formation. A flak burst detonated directly beneath Morgan's B-17. The aircraft was lifted 50 feet by the blast wave. Metal fragments punched through the fuselage floor. Morgan felt the controls go sluggish, hydraulic damage to the elevator system. But the aircraft remained flyable. At 9:52 hours, Morgan identified the target. The Kugelfischer plant was exactly where the briefing had placed it, a cluster of factory buildings arranged in a distinctive L shape, surrounded by rail yards and storage facilities. Morgan had memoized that L shape from aerial reconnaissance photographs. Now he was seeing it from 25,000 feet, matching the image in his mind to the reality below. Without radio communication, Morgan could not coordinate the bomb run with Verini's in the nose compartment. He could not verify target identification. He could not confirm the northern bomb site calculations. He could only fly the heading and altitude he had memorized during the briefing. At 9:54 hours, Morgan established a bomb run. Heading 094 degrees. Altitude 25,000 feet. Airspeed 162 miles per hour. The bombing run required 90 seconds of straight and level flight, 90 seconds during which the formation would be maximally vulnerable to flak and fighters. No evasive maneuvers. No altitude changes. Just straight flight into the heaviest defenses in Germany. The flak was continuous. Black bursts filled the sky ahead. Morgan flew through the explosions. The B-17 shook with each near miss. He could hear fragments striking the wings, the fuselage, the tail. Behind him, another bomber fell out of formation, one wing sheared off by a direct hit. 86 bombers remained. At 9 hours 55 minutes and 28 seconds, Morgan felt the aircraft lurch upward. Bomb release. Varinis had activated the bombardier controls without radio coordination, dropping the bombs based on the northern bomb site calculations and Morgan's memorized navigation. Behind Morgan, 86 bombers released their loads in sequence, over 200 tons of high explosive falling toward the target. Morgan broke left immediately, diving away from the flak zone. The formation followed, each combat box executing the escape maneuver in succession. German fighters pursued but could not penetrate the defensive fire. The formation lost 2 more bombers during the withdrawal, 1 to fighters, 1 to flak damage that caused structural failure. 84 bombers remained. The return flight followed the same route in reverse. Morgan navigated from memory, identifying waypoints as they appeared. The main river at Weisbeck, the Rhine at Koblenz, the German border at Venlo, the Dutch coast at Vlissingen. Each waypoint matched his memorized navigation. Each heading change was executed without charts, without radio, without external confirmation. At 12:34 hours, the formation crossed the English coast. Morgan landed at Thorpe Abbotts at 13:07 hours. 84 bombers landed safely. 6 bombers lost over Germany. 3 damaged beyond repair but with crews surviving emergency landings. Post-mission intelligence analyzed the bombing results using reconnaissance photographs taken 3 hours after the raid. The bomb pattern was centered 200 yards northwest of the designated aim point, the Kugelfischer plant's main production building. The pattern was tighter than 70% of missions flown with full navigation equipment and radio coordination. The mission debrief lasted 4 hours. Morgan explained his navigation methodology: memory of waypoints, visual identification of landmarks, dead reckoning between checkpoints, estimated wind drift based on observed ground speed and compass heading, no charts, no radio, no external confirmation. The intelligence officer asked how Morgan had maintained such precise navigation without instruments. Morgan replied that he had studied the charts during briefing until he could visualize the entire route. He had memorized the shape of rivers, the angles of roads, the positions of cities. He had calculated headings and distances in his mind, cross-checking against visual landmarks as they appeared. The intelligence officer noted that Morgan's memory-based navigation was more accurate than many navigators using full equipment. The bombing pattern proved it. 200 yards from aim point without charts or radio was exceptional performance under any circumstances. Under combat conditions with equipment failure, it was unprecedented. Morgan was recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation noted his extraordinary navigation skill, his decision to continue the mission despite catastrophic equipment failure, and his successful guidance of 90 bombers to target using only memorized information. Morgan completed his combat tour in May 1944. He flew 31 missions over Germany. Mission 247 to Schweinfurt was the only mission where he navigated without charts or radio. It was also the most accurate bombing mission of his tour. The navigation technique Morgan employed became a case study at navigation training schools. Instructors emphasized the importance of chart study and landmark memorization as backup systems. The lesson was simple: equipment fails, charts are lost, radios die. Navigation depends ultimately on the navigator's ability to visualize the route and recognize landmarks. Morgan returned to the United States in June 1944. He participated in the War Bond Tour, speaking at rallies across the country. He rarely mentioned Mission 247. When asked about it, He said only that he had studied the charts carefully during briefing and remembered what he needed to remember. Robert Morgan survived the war. He returned to civilian life, working as a commercial pilot. He flew for Pan American Airways, navigating routes across the Atlantic and Pacific. He never flew combat missions again. But the skill he demonstrated on March 17, 1944, navigating 400 miles through enemy territory without charts or radio, leading 90 bombers to target with memory alone, remained the defining achievement of his military service. The Schweinfurt raid of March 17, 1944 destroyed 40% of Germany's ball-bearing production capacity. The factories did not return to full operation until after the war ended. The raid was executed by 90 bombers led by a navigator who lost his charts and radio but remembered the route well enough to guide an entire strike force to target. Morgan's navigation from memory proved a principle that remains relevant. Preparation matters. Study matters. The ability to visualize and recall critical information under stress separates competent performance from exceptional achievement. Equipment provides capability, but knowledge provides resilience when equipment fails. On March 17, 1944, Robert Morgan demonstrated that resilience. He flew 400 miles through German airspace with 90 bombers following his lead. He navigated from memory. He hit the target within 200 yards, and he brought 84 bombers home.